Great morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo-O. Bo-Willette's my name. You can always check out the archives at my YouTube channel at Bo-Willette. And if you're interested or you know anybody interested in going through the Bible in a pretty simple way with someone kind of like me, but the old Generation X pastor, always have those interesting Generation X references, it seems like, but you can point people to this Devo, and we just go through the Bible verse by verse and book by book, and very cool, very fun, and just kind of go through it in the morning, 9 o'clock to around 9:30. So shalom to you, my brother Jesus. Hope you're well, and it's good to see you in the House of Devo already. So the archives, there's many of them, and you can check those out at the YouTube channel Bo-Willette. So we've been doing these Devos for about a year and 8 months, 9 months, maybe even longer. I'm not sure anymore, but super fun. So Kurt, good to see you in the house. Whoop, let me take that off and let me get you guys some light. There we go, light. Now you can see me even better. How about that? So Genesis chapter 33, that's where we're at this morning. I hope your mind is ready to get into this. We're in the narrative of Jacob and Esau, and we saw that Jacob is going to want to make peace, want to reconcile with his brother. He's traveling back to the land of his father, Isaac, and he has received the promise of God that it's through Jacob that the nation of Israel would be birthed and grow. And Jacob's name even changed to Israel, if you remember. So Jacob is now going to be seen as Israel pretty soon. And we're going to see that and all of his kids that he has. We're going to kind of get into that narrative as well. But we really see a heart of reconciliation. How there was really a humble heart that Jacob is bringing now to this potential meeting with his brother. And as Jacob kind of prepares his heart for this time, he gets all of his kind of money together, all of his wealth, and he divides it, and he sends a bunch of it off to meet Esau with his if you will, his employees. And he takes them and he says, hey, take my stuff, my camels and a bunch of these things that we have, you know, the goats and the sheep and the all this, and why don't you take them, go forward and meet Esau and let him know that, tell Esau that your brother, means well, man. He wants to, kind of honor you. And we see a real humbled heart, and I just love that, humble heart. Then Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming with his 400 men. So Jacob is now seeing Esau come, and he hears with these 400 men, and Jacob doesn't know what to think. He thinks, man, how is this meeting going to go? What's going to be like when we have a confrontation? When some people hear the term confrontation, they immediately get scared because they think something bad's going to happen. It's a confrontation. Well, not necessarily. Confrontations can end up being good. It just depends on what the hearts of the parties are like, right? If people's hearts are kind of yuck, then the confrontation is probably not going to go very well. But if the people's hearts are humble, then good. It seems like they go well. Now, there's a passage in the New Testament in the book of Timothy I always think of. It's in Timothy chapter 1, and it says, the purpose of the commandment, meaning the commandment that we walk in as Christians, is love. And it says to love from a pure heart, from a good conscience, and sincere faith. And boy, what a great kind of thing, a good statement to really want to get to before I have a confrontation. So before I do any confronting, I ask the question, do I have a good conscience? Do I have sincere faith? Am I coming in this with a pure heart? What's my motivation? Is my motivation to change someone? Is my motivation to get them to do what I want them to do? Is that the motivation? Is my conscience burdened by my own plank in my own eye? And that's going to distort and make yucky this meeting. Those kind of things. Do I have envy in my heart and strife? Or am I having this confrontation in faith to God, or is it really just what I want to do? Pure heart, good conscience, sincere faith. Kurt says he loves 1 John chapter 3 verse 23. Yeah, that's a good one too. 1 Timothy chapter 1, the one I just mentioned, is a very practical one for you all to examine, and me to examine our hearts before we have a confrontation. Do I have a pure heart, a good conscience, and sincere faith going into this meeting? That's always been something that's on my heart for years, is that 1 Timothy passage. But here we see that this is something that Jacob is having. He's got a pure heart. He's got a good heart here. He's got a good conscience. He's wrestled with the Lord. He's dealt with things. And, we see that he has, sincere faith. He's trusting God. He's had an encounter with the Lord. And he's really trusting the Lord to go back to the land in obedience to the Lord's call in his life. So he sees Esau coming with 400 men. And so he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and his 2 servant wives. He put the servant wives and their children at the front, Leah and her children next. This is pretty amazing. He puts the servant wives and their children in the front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then Jacob went on ahead as he approached his brother. So he puts his family right there to be seen. And I don't know if there's much to be said about the way this is put in order. I guess we could say that he loved Rachel most, and so he there's that kind of order of that, Rachel, then Leah, then the servant wives kind of thing. It says, then Jacob went on ahead, and as he approached his brother, he bowed to the ground 7 times before him. Pretty interesting, huh? So he comes to him, and can you imagine bowing to someone 7 times? What do you think about doing that before someone? That kind of honor, to someone. Now, a lot of times, we do that to very wealthy people, because somehow in our minds we tend to think wealthy people have it together. Jesus taught us something so far different than that kind of way of thinking. It says for our sakes he became poor. Amazing, right? Jesus, who is so rich, became poor for our sakes, so that we might become rich in him. Isn't that great? Our wealth is not maybe from a financial point of view. And we have to be careful about the way we look at socioeconomics. It's a poison in all of us when that's all distorted in us, and we think rich people somehow have it together, and people that don't have money don't have it together, and people that live over here, that's not great, and oh my gosh, and those people, and blah, that kind of thing. And it happens everywhere. People in that area look at people living up in the hills, and I grew up to look at people who lived in the hills and be envious of them, and be have a real hard heart towards them, and just think evil of everybody who lived in nice areas. And that's just how my mind worked, and the music I listened to and the things I was around. That's how we all looked at things. But people in the hills could also look at people that are in the lowlands and go, man, those people, right? And gosh, again, all that bitter heart can prevent us from walking in a humble way, to bow down before one another, submit to one another out of the fear of the Lord, right? Ephesians chapter 5:21. Submit to one another out of the fear of the Lord. Paula says, my youngest son, when he was a teenager, used to say money was evil. Well, the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, the Bible says, right? The love of money. Oh, so true. And there's a lot to be said about money, that's for sure, Paula. But notice just the heart of Jacob to bow. He gets to the place of confronting, and this meeting finally happens. And I just want you to see all the years that have passed, the 20 or so years that have passed since these two brothers have seen each other. And it's just up to this major point of like, what's going to happen? Is Esau going to come at Jacob and just punch him in the mouth, or what? And Jacob goes up to Esau and he bows, right? And Esau ran to meet him, embraced him, threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they both wept. Oh man, is that so cool? Don't you just love that section right there? Esau runs to meet him. It sounds so much like the prodigal son, right? In the New Testament, where the father who loves the prodigal, of course he loves his other son too, but he loves the prodigal, and the prodigal returns home, and the father runs to meet the son. Here you have Esau running to meet him, embraces him, and throws his arms around him and kisses him. Oh man, talk about a good confrontation, right? To confront one another, to meet finally one another, to really deal with the issues. And here you see hearts are just so ready, so ready. Are you ready? Are you finally ready for reconciliation? Are you finally ready to say, okay, I'm ready to reconcile? I'm tired of all that hate. I'm tired of all that anger. I'm tired of all that, envy, that strife, and that, all that stuff. Instead, I'm just going to, give it all to the Lord and just walk moment by moment and trusting the Lord. And that's all I got, And, so here Esau runs to meet him. He embraces him. A lot of times Esau gets a bad rap. And, we kind of think negatively of Esau. But, boy, man, what a powerful, neat example Esau is right here. I would love to be like Esau in this way, to embrace, to wrap his arms around his neck and kiss him. How do I show that I care for someone? I love it. It's not just saying things, but notice it's touch, right? There's touch involved. He embraces him. He takes his arms around him, right? He threw his arms around his neck, and it says he kissed him. That there's a intimacy, a closeness. Esau was safe. Esau is now safe. Jacob feels his embrace. And I love that. I love that kind of thing. I love, the touch. And it was sad, right, when COVID started and we weren't doing much hugging at church, and people were bummed, and people were like, man, I want a hug. I want that intimacy, that fellowship. And oh boy, there's nothing like it. Then Esau looked at the woman and the children and asked, who are these people with you? These are the children God has graciously given to me. How does Jacob look at his children? This is the children God has given to me. Isn't that neat? He says he looks at it all through the lens of God. This is the children God has graciously given to me. How does our world look at children? Do they look at children as, this is the children God has graciously given to me? Isn't that interesting? Wouldn't it be a different world if people would say this when they got pregnant? This is the child God has graciously given to me. And it says, then the servant wives came forward with their children and bowed before him. His whole family comes before Esau and honors Esau as the eldest brother. And I could tell you this, I have an older brother who's a year and 3 months or so older than me. And it doesn't matter how much money he makes or how much money I might make or anything like that. It doesn't matter about our socioeconomic circles. He's my older brother. And he'll always be my older brother. And because of that, I love him. I respect him. And he's the firstborn. And there's something with that. He has my respect, and I want to respect him and listen to what he shares and how he's looking at the world, and I just love him, and I'm sure Jacob, even though they came out of the womb pretty much at the same time. I mean, Jacob came out last. Esau came out first. Esau was the eldest, but I'm sure, I know just from this you could tell that Jacob saw his older brother and just said, hey, that's my brother. I want to respect him. That's my older brother. And there's something about that I think is really cool and something really neat there, and something that's very lost in our culture, unfortunately. And maybe one of the things that's lost is just the humility and the respect, and so maybe the leadership, and other things. But anyway, my mind wanders on me and my brother. Just love him so much. Such a cool guy. If I talk about him too much, I'll cry because I just think the world of him. And anyway. And it says, next came Leah and her children, and they bowed before him. And finally Joseph and Rachel came forward and bowed before him. And what of all these flocks and herds I met as I came, Esau asked. Because remember, Jacob sent ahead all these herds and flocks for Esau. And Jacob replied, they are gifts, my lord, to ensure your friendship. Man, I really want to really be clear that I am here for friendly reasons. When you go to meet someone and reconcile, what do you bring with you? What do you bring with you to really show that, man, you mean business when it comes to reconciliation? Man, do you bring something? Do you bring something? And what are you bringing? Do you bring that thing to say, hey, I want you to be super clear that I have come to reconcile, that my heart is for you. Here you go. Here's, $20,000. You're like, what? Tamara, I love how you say, let it wander. That's great. Yeah, I don't know if you want my mind to wander too much to the right or to the left. A lot of wandering. But, you bring $20,000 to a meeting and you say, hey, I'm serious about reconciliation. Someone's going to be like, wow, this person's really serious about this, Yeah, what is it, what am I willing to give up, for reconciliation? What am I willing to show that it's not worth us reconciling? This money, $20,000, is not worth it. I would rather not have this than and forfeit our relationship. Jacob comes out like that. Isn't that cool? Man, when he goes into reconciliation, man, he goes into it like he's in a war, man. He's like fighting. He's like, I'm going to win this reconciliation. Here's all this money, all the things I own. He's all, you know, I'd rather give this up than for us to be apart longer. Man, so please know that I am serious. And Esau, what does he say? Esau says, man, my brother, I have plenty. Keep what you have for yourself. Man, I got plenty of stuff, dude. Keep what you got. And Jacob insisted, no, if I have found favor with you, if I have found grace. Isn't that cool? Favor. Have you found favor with God? He's a holy God, a perfect God. Have you found favor with God? How? How can you find favor with God, knowing that you are the mess, knowing that you have cheated and stealed? You become like Jacob, right? We are like Jacob, right? We are the heel catchers. We are the ones that do everything. How can I find favor with God? Oh, isn't it just by his grace, just by his love? There's nothing I've earned, right? Jacob didn't need to bring everything to Esau, who ruled the land over here in his area of Edom. He didn't need to rule. He didn't need all the money, right? He had it all. He had the cattle on 1,000 hills. He had all the wealth, but he just loves Jacob. And that's awesome. Man, I see a picture of Esau being like the Father, like God, in the way he just grants grace to Jacob. And I just love that, man. I just love that. So it says, no, if I have found favor with you, please accept this gift from me. And what a relief to see your friendly smile. Oh, isn't that cool? And it says, it's like seeing the face of God. I love that. Jacob is just like, man, seeing you, what a relief to see you, my brother. It's like, you're like, looking at you is like looking at like the face of God. It's like, man, it's so awesome. I mean, gosh, isn't that great? Esau. Yeah, of all people, the dude who gets the bad rap all the time, Esau, is this wonderful example. Please take the gifts I have brought you, for God has been very gracious to me. And Jacob says, hey, God has been so gracious to me. Please take these, brother. They're for you. I have more than enough. And because Jacob insisted, Esau finally accepted the gift. So the only thing they're warned at this point is simply if Esau will receive the gifts that Jacob is giving. And wow, finding favor with the King, so good, so needed in our life. What helps me as a human being become stable, sure, confident. It's knowing I'm accepted, I'm beloved, I'm cared for by God. He's with me, he's for me, he's going to see me through. Man, so important. Man, the smiley, friendly faces. I love how Jesus hinted on that. And Tamara hinted on that idea of the way they're greeting one another, the friendliness, the kindness, the smiles, the hugs, the kisses, the hints of generosity, right? The gifts of generosity, the giving, all those things, so beautiful. When we do that, we see the face of God in each other, right? Christ in us, the hope of glory, Colossians 1. I think it's 27. I always get that 27 or 28. Colossians 1, 27, 28. But Christ in us, the hope of glory, man, right? And him in us. So cool. And Paul says we are like family. And you know what? In so much ways we are family. And we are spiritual family. So true. And we'll be with each other forever. And that's powerful. We are part of the church of the living God. And that is amazing. The assembly. Church means assembly. The assembly of the living God. So Jacob says, so it says, well, Esau said, let's be going. I will lead the way. But Jacob replied, You can see, my lord, that some of the children are very young, and the flocks and herds have their young too, and they are driven too hard. Even for one day, all the animals could die. Please, my lord, go ahead of your servant. We will follow slowly at a pace that is comfortable for the livestock and the children. I will meet you at Seir. All right, Esau said, but at least let me assign some of my men to guide and protect you. Jacob says, man, we are a slow train moving. Brother, man, you guys are much more used to this terrain. Man, traveling 100 or so miles, to go back to this place, it's wearied us. And we'll just lag behind. And Esau says, hey, I'll give you some of my people to help you. And Jacob responds, that's not necessary. It's enough that you've received me warmly, my lord. So Esau turned around and started back to Seir at the same day. Jacob, on the other hand, traveled on to Sukkoth. There he built himself a house and made shelters for his livestock. That is why the place is named Sukkoth, which means shelters. You guys might know of a festival, a Jewish festival, Israeli festival, called the Feast of... Drum roll. You get it? What's Sukkoth? The Feast of Tabernacles, shelters. Yeah, you guys probably know that. During the transfiguration of Christ, when Christ shone in his glory before, what was it, Peter and John, and I think maybe James was there too, right? They wanted to build shelters, right? These Sukkoth, these shelters, right? They thought the Feast of Tabernacles. Anyway, we're going to see that there is going to be a feast later on down the road from this narrative right here that's going to kind of commemorate this idea of shelters. So this is just a kind of a first mention area where we kind of see it first mentioned, and sometimes it's really neat to see that. Feast of Tents, that's right, Kurt. So very cool. Later, having traveled all the way from Padan Aram, Jacob arrived safely at the town of Shechem. I always loved Shechem. Shechem's a cool place in the Bible. In the land of Canaan, and there he set up camp outside the town. And Jacob bought a plot of land where he camped from the family of Hamor, the father of Shechem. Back in Abraham's day, Abraham hung out over here for 100 pieces of silver. And there he built an altar and named it El Elohi Israel, which means God, the God of Israel, the God of Jacob, right? And so he builds this place. He spends 100 pieces of silver. If we remember back when Abraham bought his plot to be buried in, or to have Sarah be buried, Abraham paid a lot more than 100 pieces of silver, if I remember correctly. He paid a ton more. Abraham really wanted that land. And here you see them starting to buy more land, if you will, possess the land more. So they come into the land. He takes kind of root again in the land. After this hundreds of miles journey back home, he's now in the land of Canaan, the land that would be called Israel. He's reconciled with his brother. He knows that God is with him, the God of Israel. Here you see that, and wabam, you know what I mean? Now you have really the beginnings of Israel, going on. And isn't that cool? So many things. He reconciles and he takes possession of the land. And he says, this is the promise that God has given us. And God's given you and me promises. And we just need to step out in faith and trust him. Trust that that's right. That promise is for us. He is our God. The God of Israel is our God, and he will see us through. He will hold fast to his promises to see us through. Those who believe in him will never die. Those who believe in him have passed from judgment to life. We are now part of a kingdom that is not of this world, but that will one day rule and reign in love, in a loving way. in a righteous way, the Bible says. Wow, some really cool stuff in this chapter. Beautiful chapter. You guys have a good one. It's always good seeing you. And you guys have amazing, awesome comments in the morning. You guys are rocking the comment corner hardcore. So it's awesome. I love it. Let's keep, focused on the Lord today, okay? So you guys take care. Have a great one. We'll talk at you, Lord willing, tomorrow morning. Okay, bye-bye.